You are listening to Within Tolerance, a podcast for machinists by a machinist. I'm your host, Dylan Jackson of Proteum Machining, and this week I'm very happy to welcome Shawn Conour. Welcome, Shawn.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So for anybody who doesn't know who you are, what you do, where they can find you online, please give us all the details.
My name's Shawn Conour. I'm the president of Conour Manufacturing. I'm an 80% owner. My father is 20% owner. He kind of started this company back in 1985. You can find us on Instagram at Conour_MFG. You can find us on YouTube, Conour Manufacturing. And honestly, sometimes I do a bad job of posting, honestly, in both places. But you can check out our Instagram.
But you have done a couple of videos recently that have been fantastic. I don't know who's doing your editing, if it's you or somebody else, but they are fantastic.
Yeah, so we're just getting started on YouTube. That's kind of a new journey. And so a friend of mine, Micah Daly, he owns a company called Central Valley Productions. And that dude's fantastic. Like, he's so good. He's got great cameras. He's great. Yeah.
That's killer. So what does Conour Manufacturing do? What do you guys specialize in?
We're a job shop, machine shop, and we primarily service like food and beverage industry. At times, we've done a lot of work for tech, but that kind of ebbs and flows a little bit. Specifically kind of after COVID, it was like a lot of our tech clients kind of never came back for whatever reason. But
interesting.
Yeah, and who knows, geographically, I'm a little separated from the Bay Area. So we are located in California. We're in Central California. So if you look at a map of California and you point right in the middle, north to south, middle, east to west, like, you're going to hit my town with your finger, basically. So we're like a 2.5-hour drive to most places in the Bay Area, as long as it's not like deep Bay. So sometimes that was a hindrance for some of those tech companies. Whereas here in the Valley, I can throw a rock and hit a food processing plant, a winery, stuff like that. So that's kind of that's our bread and butter. I guess to backtrack a little bit, we patented a racking arm valve back in 2017. And so that's a big part of the company. And then in years where that's hit really hard, and then we've had call it luck, call it whatever, done other bigger projects as well. That's when we've really moved the ball forward as a company in terms of like expanding.
So let's just say that I have no idea what that valve is. What does that actually do?
So think of it almost like hydraulic cylinder, except it doesn't go in and out. It rotates along the center line of the axis, right? It's all stainless steel. It's all food grade, other than like the seals, but the seals are food grade. And then it has a 2-inch tube that is welded to this main inside barrel, what we call the barrel of the valve. So the main body of the valve is fixed to a flange. And then on the outside of that, typically they will have like a 3-inch butterfly valve. And then there's slot that goes down into the barrel with a handle. So now you can rotate that barrel inside this body 138 degrees to the left or to the right, depending on how the client orders it. What that does is it takes this 2-inch tube that's like 72 inches long, and it has a bend and it comes up at an angle, and it allows them to rotate that inside like a wine tank that's anywhere typically from like 15 feet in diameter out to like 35 feet in diameter. And then that allows them to pump wine in and out, to mix wine, blend wine. It allows them to cool the wine if they need to create like almost like a little mini vortex within. Now, they're in winemaking, you're never like sloshing the wine around hardcore, right? Everything is gentle and smooth, and you're not trying to aerate it. But it allows them to mix and do several other. It's not just that. I don't know. It's very specific. It's very niche.
And this thing's giant then. Like when you said a valve, I assumed, something the size of my hand or something, but
yeah. Oh my
this thing
gosh.
sounds massive.
I'm blanking on the length is like 7.5 inches long. No, it's a little under 7.5. Man, I built a ton of them just last year. I was sick and tired of looking at them, honestly, by the end of the year. A great problem, right? Blessed. I'm so blessed. But yes, they're heavy. They're huge. There's essentially only one main component of that we farm out. And all we have them do is the lathe work. But it's a ton of work because you have like a captivated diameter. And so it's like a flange and then a tube. But instead of us welding flanges to some machine tube and worrying about concentricity, worrying about tolerances, it's machined from like this huge piece of stainless steel. So the company that does the lathe work for us on that, they're punching it on like an old Morisaki with like 3 speeds, like low, medium, and high. And they're running like a 3-inch spade drill. And I forget what they say they're taking per rev, but it's insane. Like they're pulling out a chip that's like 40 thousandths thick in stainless, with a 3-inch drill. They direct plumb coolant to it. So they don't rotate the turret. They don't do anything. They just put these saw cut slugs up into this. I think the chuck's like a 24-inch chuck on this machine. It's insane.
Holy
it's like
cow.
The biggest, oldest machine I've ever seen in my life. And the chips that come out of that machine are insane. Like they're sheet metal. They're chunks of sheet metal.
That's insane.
Yeah. And so they do that and they do a great job. And then from there, we put it in the mill and we put 4 holes. We stand it up. We put 4 holes. Then we have a fixture. We flip it. We drill 4 more holes. Then I put it on the 4th axis with a tailstock. And that's when there's some drilled and tapped holes. There's the slot. There's some other little key features that we put on it. I could go back and I'll post like some current pictures on Instagram of what the valve looks like. And I'll put some of the details. I want to say like in total, it weighs like 20 something pounds, maybe when it's fully assembled and done.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a good heavy duty, it's a high end product. It's for the wine industry. It's kind of a staple for certain wineries that process wine a certain way. If they're using centrifuge filters in the winemaking process, then that's what they're doing. And then I guess I should also backtrack and say, not that this is supposed to be an educational thing about wine or anything. We could get into the weeds on it. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, it's cool and super blessed to have great clients. Really only about like the top 4 or 5 largest wineries in the world would even employ this racking arm because of like the size and the scale.
That's super cool though. And just to assuage any worries you have, I have said it multiple times. This is the In the Weeds podcast. I'm more than happy to go into the weeds on stuff like this. But let's get into your backstory. How did you get into the trade? How did you get to where you are now? Where did you start?
Yeah, so my father has been a machinist his whole life. He got a job at 16 sweeping chips in a shop in the Bay. He grew up in the Bay Area. And so a friend of his that was a little bit old, a couple years older than him, he started working in a machine shop. And then he got my father a job in the machine shop while I believe my father was still in high school. And so he would sweep chips after school and do that. And that was back in, the day when there was no CNC machines, none of that. So from there, that's like back in the day, what's it called? Like, I think I've actually heard people talk about it on your podcast when all the machinists didn't own the machines, but they'd come in and work on a machine. Help me out there. What's that called? Where they were like contractors, essentially.
Okay.
Right? Have you ever worked with any old machinists that's like in the Bay Area anyway, I guess. And maybe it's kind of specific to the Bay Area. That's how it was. So you'd have
I've heard similar stories at least. Like I know Jason was saying that like they were paid by part versus like, stuff like that. So I could see. Yeah. I've definitely heard of like contract work like that.
Exactly. So the way that it worked in the Bay Area predominantly back then was it was like a percentage based. So the shop owner would quote the work, the shop owner would purchase the material, provide tooling most of the time, I think, or at least the big stuff like the vices and that kind of stuff. And then tooling, like the end mills and stuff like that. And then so they would just, as fast as they could work, they could just take on the jobs that the owner of the machine shop was bringing in through the shop. And
like a commission based.
Yeah.
system.
So it was all percentage
Okay, yeah.
based. Yeah. So as hard as you wanted to work, as fast as you wanted to work, that's how much money you could make. And it's cool listening to like, because I go to the Bay Area, you know, and talk to some of these old machinists and that are much older than even my father. I actually met some of the guys that actually taught my father how to be a machinist. So they were old men at the time. You know, my father's like a 20-year-old, you know, really learning the trade, learning the skills. And these dudes are just wild, right? Like they've forgotten more about manual machining than I'll ever learn. You know, like I'm not a great manual machine. Some would say I'm probably not a great CNC machinist, but like,
I think we all say that about ourselves.
yeah,
But yeah, no, old people like that are so cool to meet and learn from. And that's amazing that you got to meet the guys that your dad learned from.
yeah, it's crazy. We have some like old school deburring tools and stuff that those dudes were making for like specific jobs. And then like, I'll just use it to deburr like a square piece of flat Delrin that I cut on the water jet or something. And I zip around the edges and it like, you know, and they like hand ground all the little inserts and they have like a whole box of them that they, you know, just wild stuff, right? Like those dudes were sharpening drills, you know, they were doing all, and I don't know, maybe people are still sharpening drills. I don't know, but like, I'm not, right? Like,
Yeah, me neither.
I'm buying an OSG drill and I'm running it until we can't run it anymore. And then I'm throwing it away typically, right? Gone down that rabbit hole of trying to have drills resharpened and then like they'll sharpen it, but then they won't coat it. Like, yeah, this is just a waste of time.
Yeah.
And
I actually used one of those this week that like I think we inherited from Brad's old job or something. And, you know, I'm so used to these drills lasting like a few hundred holes. And I think it made it through like 10 or 15 at my normal parameters. I was like, oh, well, I guess that's why we don't usually send them out for regrind. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. And so been down that rabbit hole and, you know, times have just changed so much, right? And if you're lucky enough to be drilling the same size holes, you know, you buy a handful of those drills at a time, you get them for a good price. And like, yeah, I'm purchasing drills like every 8 months, 12 months. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like I'm online buying drills all the time. But we do have a big assortment, you know, and all the cabinet number drills, fractional drills, letter drills, you know, all that kind of stuff.
So your dad, you know, got started in the Bay Area. Obviously, you were around it from the time you were a kid, but it wasn't your first thing that you went into, right? You were in the military?
Yeah, so my father left the Bay Area. His grandparents retired and they lived in the Bay Area and they came out here to the Valley and they really wanted my father to follow them so that they had family around and so he could help them out around the house as they got older and stuff like that. And so my father moved his machine. So by this time he owned a machine shop. So he purchased the machine shop from the owner that he was working at the time. And it was the guy that he really worked for the longest period of time as a machinist, right? He bounced around a little bit, did different things at different times. I think even at certain times he left that guy just because like there wasn't as much work and then ultimately ended up back there and then purchased the company from him. That guy like financed him basically, right? He believed in him. He knew that he could get his paid back and stuff like that. So he sold him the company. He moved out here to the Valley and converted the 2-car garage that was connected to the house into a machine shop. So since I was a little kid, my mom would be like, hey, bring your dad this cup of water, you know, and I would just like walk outside the door and hand my dad water. And then we were little, my brother and I, we were close in age and we always wanted money. So we'd like sweep chips and do stuff. So exposed to all of that. And then after high school, kind of like as we got older, I'd help more in the machine shop. Sometimes like I wouldn't even go to school. My dad would be like, hey, you're going to skip school today. Not often, right? But like I'd be helping just do remedial things like maybe polish something on a manual lathe. Like we'd have different mandrels for parts. A lot of the parts that he was making at that time, all CNC, he had been making them since it was the manual days, right? So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, like wild, right? Taking one of the first CNC machines he had was like an old, I believe it was a Murasaki, and it was a tape machine that had been converted to a CNC machine, right? And so he'd been making these parts manually. They were out of stainless steel, long, like gun drilling, like all this stuff. And then he bought that Murasaki and he basically set it up to just run one job. And then as the quantities went up with the world expanding and everything, then that's when he bought his first Mazak lathe. And basically that job just paid for the Mazak lathe. Like they made thousands of those parts, like hundreds and hundreds a month for, I think, the better part of like a decade.
And this is still all in your garage.
So it was in the garage initially. And then once that tape machine came around, they realized they needed more floor space. So at this point, my father had taken on a partner, and the guy who got him his first job, right? So they grew up on the same street. They've known each other since the 3rd grade. And so he comes from the Bay Area out here, joins my father in a partnership, and then they moved to a bigger building which is actually, this will all come full circle, right? On Castle Air Force Base. So Castle Air Force Base closes down under Clinton. And then my father and his business partner were one of the first private local companies to rent a building from there. So they had like 2,000 amps of 480 3-phase power in this building, right? And it was like, dude, it was such a cool building. I grew up as a little kid with a BB gun running around shooting squirrels out on the other side of the runway. This is the 2nd largest runway west of the Mississippi. And there's like these huge bomb bunkers that have like doors that are ginormous steel doors. And like my brother and I are like always constantly trying to push each other in and like close the door on each other. And he's stupid. But like, so grew up running around this old base with just like the electrical wires, like nothing's to code. And there was just like huge 3-phase wires just like running along the ground inside these buildings and stuff. Like they were insulated, you know?
Right. But still.
So cool, right? The transformers, these old school transformers that were from like probably the 50s, 60s, you know, just massive transformers outside of all these buildings with just all this crazy power. And yeah, so I think at one point they got up to like 12 or 13 CNC machines. I might be misspeaking on that. It might have been like 13 employees or something, and like 8 or 9. I don't know. They were welding. They were doing all kinds of stuff. And so I'm in the mix of it, and I'm just sweeping and breaking down boxes and doing all that as a little kid, helping out in high school. So then in 1999, they split ways. So my mother got like terminally ill with cancer. And so my father was trying to like spend time with the family, spend time with us, and still kind of try to do everything. So he brought the business back to the property. So his property's 3 acres. So he put up a 40 by 40 steel building in 1999. He brought back, they downsized, they sold machines, his partner kept machines, and then my father kept a Mazak quick turn 15 lathe, and then a VTC 20 traveling column mill. So he kept those 2 machines, and then of course he had like a manual lathe, manual mill, all the other little stuff that comes with a machine shop like that in that 40 by 40 building. And then so I'd help in there in high school. And then I wanted to get away from the valley. I wanted to get away from, you know, like we're surrounded by almond orchards and stuff like that. I was ready to get out of here. So I went to the Marine Corps, did that for 4 years, came back, I started in a welding program to get an AA and get welding certified. And then in that, we had to do some drafting classes. And then I realized there was like CAD classes, and I was like, well, those look kind of cool. So then I started doing that, all getting paid, which is great, by the GI Bill, right? Because I serve. And then, yeah. And so super, super cool for dude, I always tell like these young kids that I see, like, that don't know what they want. And like, dude, go fight a war, become a man, come back. Even though I'm anti-war, like, fight a war, come back, it's very good. It's like I'm conflicted, right? And
no, some of my best friends in college, like, were much older than me, or not much older, but maybe 8-10 years older than me, and we're back on the GI Bill, and they were just it's so, I guess, inspiring might be the right word, when you're like a 20 something who doesn't want to be in class, to see someone who's like, listen, I've been around the world, I've fought in wars, and this is what I actually want to do, so you need to shut up so I can actually pay attention.
Yeah. There's like a bunch of memes about it, like with Adam Sandler when he was sitting in a class with a bunch of like little kids. I forget what the movie is. Or like, that's kind of what it feels like to be a veteran in college, right? Because like you said, at that point, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23 years old, and there's a bunch of 18-year-old kids in this welding class that have, took like one welding class in high school, and they're like smoking cigarettes in the, on break and stuff. And I'm like, what are you guys doing with your lives? And so, so doing all that, I had a great professor I had a great welding professor, and I had just a phenomenal, CAD instructor. His name's James Thornburn, and he's actually the head CAD instructor at Fresno City College right now, currently. And so we're friends for life. Like, I go to his house and drink a beer every now and then.
That's awesome.
Super cool dude. Yeah. He actually, circling back a little bit, he helped me create a legitimate blueprint per like GD&T for my racking arm, right? So I'm working in the shop, going to school, going to college, and then I'm like, I have this racking arm design. I drew it in CAD, but I don't know how to dimension because we haven't even gotten to that class yet. And then in all reality, I probably gaffed off like a lot of the GD&T, right? Because it was way above my head, and I didn't understand it, and all of that. I still obviously will struggle, but I'm so much better now.
It's definitely one of those things, you have to know the why before it sticks.
Exactly.
Like, if you just try to learn it, you're like, I don't know, this is a bunch of random ass symbols that don't mean shit to me. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, and then you make a part and you put it on a granite plate and it looks like a banana, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's what flatness and parallelism mean. Okay.
I know why they care about that. Yeah, exactly. And so it's trial by fire, baptism by fire. But anyway, so James was a great instructor, really inspired me. That dude, I still say it to this day, in terms of CAD design, there's nobody that can touch that dude. Like, he's absolutely insane. It's wild. Like, he's helped me on countless projects throughout the years since college. And that dude, back before like parameters and everything was like cool and everybody was talking about it. And we were making some parts out of sheet metal, and they had to like connect together in certain places and do some really cool things. And the tolerances were so tight that I had to mic the piece of metal that we were going to use to make mating parts, right? Because the fit was like a static fit. They didn't want it to press. They didn't want it to slip. It had to be static. So in the model, I would just go in where the sheet metal tab was, and I would just type in the few different, the 6/10 or the 8/10 variants in the plate, right? Or the 1,000, whatever it was. I would just type it in, and it would regenerate, right? All the parts. There was parts that had to slip ID, OD. There was a few different, really cool, like really slick stuff, and you do see some people talking about it, like Core Pattern Prints out of Canada.
Yeah.
He's building bikes now, right? That dude is definitely on another level of like,
oh yeah, parametric stuff. When you do it right, is amazing.
Dude, it's so crazy. And like James was preaching that to us in 2012 when like nobody, well, I guess I shouldn't say nobody was talking about that in 2012. I don't know. I wasn't in the community. I wasn't involved. And even now, right? Like you'll have a guest on and I'm not following them. And then I'll go follow them and I'll be like, this dude's insane, right? Like, and so doing that parametric stuff, he would just preach to us like, he's like, you can constrain 3 things in a sketch and that sketch is done. Like he would not let us do more than 3 constraints to a parametric sketch because he said like, you need to have full control over it later. And he wasn't even a CAD he wasn't even like a machining instructor, right? And he still isn't. But like he knew the importance of it moving into, you know, all the other disciplines from CAD. So super,
cool.
Yeah, super. And that's going to be it is a reoccurring theme in my life. Like every step of the way, I've just been around these talented individuals, right? Starting off with my father, you know, James, different just business mentors and some of my bosses in the Marine Corps, right? All just like been blessed to just be around these people that are very forward thinking and care and just like tell some young punk kid, you know, like just trying to survive in the Marine Corps, you know, like, hey man, like this is going to matter later. Right. And that was always my dad's, you know, always trying to preach like the long game to my brothers and I. There's 5 of us all together. And we're at CAD.
No, not at all. So you went to CAD class. I have yet to connect the dots on how you made it back to your family business. So where did you go from there?
Yeah. So kind of during that, as I was getting ready to wrap up, I was helping my father in the shop when I had free time. And it all kind of started just because my father wanted to build an air compressor shed because his air compressor had been like sitting outside for like since 1999. So it's 2012. He's like, hey, can you weld me an air compressor shed? I want double doors on it and this and that. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. You know, so I'd come in super early before school, weld up the frame, you know, screw the sheet metal to the side, like the steel building type material. So I did that. And then I essentially just never left, right? I just kept coming back at that point. And I always had this grand idea, like in the military, is that I just someday wanted to be in a position where like I could shoot machine guns with my friends, you know? And it's always been like my biggest hobby. And I had a blast in the Marine Corps, shooting all the Marine Corps machine guns and guns, and just all of it was super fun. Right? And I was like, this is what I love guns. And, you know, grew up shooting quail and dove and stuff like that. I've never hunted like a big game animal or anything like that. Just birds, but not even really a hunter now. I just shoot at paper targets. So I was like, wow, you know, I'm going to be a gun designer, right? I'm going to build guns, you know, and here I know nothing, right? Essentially. And so I started working for my dad. And I'm like, I'm going to learn the skills that I need to build guns. And then it just became a rabbit hole of me working in a prototype environment and just constantly building different things every day and never building more than 2 or 3 of them. And then comes along the racking arm. That is a product that's reoccurring, obviously, and we've gotten better at it. It's crazy when you have time to make a process better and you know that the job's going to happen again, and saving 20 minutes on 50 parts, you know, over 8 different part families, it just all starts to add up and compound, right? And so then we did that. We expanded the 40 by 40 steel building in 2017. We added like another 25 feet by 20 feet. And so up to this point, I'm learning Fusion 360. Really, we learned Inventor, and then we just kind of played around with Fusion 360. But I really fell in love with Fusion 360 over Inventor. And so in the shop were all Mazaks. We added a water jet in there somewhere. Man, this timeline. So here I am like using AutoCAD, from which I learned in school, right? We learned AutoCAD, then SolidWorks. So now I'm using AutoCAD to draw and make parts on the flow water jet. And so we're doing that, and everything's Mazatrol on the CNC machines, right? So we're programming on the control. And then now I'm drawing parts that we're going to make in AutoCAD, and I'm like plotting the points, right? And I'm like, okay, we're going to go up 3, and then I'm going to hit a radius, 1/4 inch radius, and then I'd put the next coordinate location. And then I'm hand typing those things into the Mazaks, which I never actually became that great at. I guess the Mazak mill I was better at. I'm still scared to death of lathes. Lathes scare me. They're so scary.
You and me both.
Dude.
Houston calls me a wuss for it, but you know what? I'll let him be expert there, and I'll take my lickings for it. It's fine.
Yeah, Chris Sabatini will stand here and be like, bro, it's 2 axes. It's not complicated. I'm like, bro, you go spin those 2 axes around with this mad energy transfer and run a 4-inch boring bar into some freaking steel jaws on a chuck that's spinning at 4,000 RPM. No thanks, man.
Yeah.
You can't see anything. And they're like, you don't need to see, it's 2D. I'm like, bro.
Can't wait for all the hate mail I'm gonna get. Come on, Dylan, don't be a pussy. It's like, yeah, okay, I'm okay.
Lathe crashes are the worst. Like, you'll scrap a machine. Like, you'll turn a huge piece of metal into like a paperweight, you know?
Yeah, so, pretzel.
So my dad really is a lathe master. I mean, that dude is so good. And so I think that was kind of the natural thing. He did all the lathe parts. I would kind of help and assist and work on the mill where I could. There was a short period of time in there where I was programming in Mazatrol some of my own parts without him there or critiquing me or anything. But I was always just like, man, there's got to be a better way. Mazatrol is powerful, and I'm not talking crap about Mazak. I am a Mazak fanboy. I will own more Mazaks in the future, but I probably won't be using Mazatrol to program them. So then we added a Hardinge mill with a 4th axis that we bought used from the guy who taught my father how to be a manual machinist. He was closing down his shop here in California and retiring and moving out to Virginia. So we bought that from him, and then that's where I started playing around. He was programming that machine on like some super old version of Gibbs that only ran on like an old school Mac computer.
Oh my goodness.
It was archaic. It was archaic and it was wild, right? And so he's over here like trying to teach us how to like program in this. And he helped us, right? He's like, hey, I'll help you guys on the first, few programs, blah, blah, blah. But you got to understand, like, this guy, Jay Palmer, talented man, right? But not really a talented CNC machinist, right? He had some CNC machines and he had a very successful career, but he never got out of like the manual speeds and feeds, right? So like we bought this machine from him in 2017. It was a 2001 machine. It still had the plastic over all the buttons on the control, right? Like there was no paint missing from inside the machine cabinet, right?
That's
like,
awesome.
The windows weren't dull from chips on a 2001 machine in 2017. And so he's here and he's helping us on these. And it was crazy. Like we got this machine and then we had this huge project with all these stainless steel parts. They were like 1 inch thick and 3/4 inch thick, and they all got water jet cut first. They were all big parts. We had to fixture them on fixture plates and clamp them down and do like, like an op, then with an MO and move clamps around, right? Had to send all those parts out for, not heat treat, but
passivate?
Not passivation, just like annealing. which I guess is a heat treat, a form of heat treat, right? So annealing. So sent him out for annealing so that we wouldn't have these banana chips afterwards. The parts some of them were long, like 30 inches long and stuff like that. And he comes in here and we're cutting with like roughers, like helical 3/4 inch roughers. And we're like moving at like 18 inches a minute, not even fast, like looking back. Right. And he was just like flustered. He was like, I can't believe you're doing that to the machine. Like he didn't realize that the machine could remove material, you know? But then I was like, there's gotta be a better way. So then I started trying to learn Fusion 360 a little bit, and a buddy of mine from Turlock, he started like encouraging me to do it. And then a gentleman from Instagram, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on who helped me, but super cool dude. He just like through Instagram, he's like, yeah, I have a post that'll probably work for that machine. And he sent it to me and it almost worked. And then I started asking around on the internet, like, how do I get this post modified? And I ended up at DSI. And so DSI modified that post for us. And that was the first time that I started using DSI. And then I realized I could get Fusion, my license, through them and get more support and more help. And so big fan of DSI, been using those guys a long time. And then, so kind of went down that rabbit hole, started making 4th axis parts on the hard hinge. And then, last year, it's crazy to say last year, 2023. Wow. We added the robo drill. Yeah, we added the robo drill in. Oh, when were we at the DSI event? That was in.
Dude, don't ask me about time. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. So the robo drill hit the floor, right? Hit the floor like maybe a month before that DSI where we first met in person.
Right.
And
yeah. I'm looking it up right now because it was in August.
End
of August. Yeah.
Yeah. So we did that DSI event was like the first time that I had gone to outside of college and outside of actually now kind of being a machinist, knowing how to turn on a machine and run programs and do stuff, was the first time that I did like professional development, right? And here I'd been listening to your podcast since the beginning. I wouldn't say that I've listened to all of them, but I've probably listened to like 95% of the episodes.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. Dude, as dumb as this, as cliche or whatever as this sounds like, I am a student of the podcast, man. Like I am. Like I would not, right? And again, here, just all these talented people that I get to listen to because you put in all this time and effort. I would not own a 5th axis machine, right? I would not be pushing this envelope. I would not be going to DSI events. I would not, between Instagram and the quality podcasts that are out there for machining, and yours was kind of like my gateway podcast into that machining world. I still remember when you like made a post about like, man, listen to therapy, machinist therapy hotline's cool and all, but like I want more. And you're like, we're gonna
I just found that post the other day, dude. It's so funny that you say that.
Yeah. I remember reading that, and I remember thinking like, man, all these machinist podcasts are popping up, but dude, yours is a staple, man.
Thanks.
But yeah, all this exposure, all this stuff that just kind of opened my eyes. Like, man, there's this whole other world out there, and I want a piece of it, or I can maybe do it, And
you brought it up. Let's dive into the robo drill. I want to get into the nitty gritty. I know you had a whole video on it. I'm definitely going to link that in the podcast description. But why a plus K or K plus? You have this video. I saw like so many comments of like, why would you spend that much on a robo drill? Why a robo drill instead of a Kern or blah, blah, blah. So let's get into it. How'd you find out about it? Why'd you choose that? What is it enabling you to do now?
Yeah, everything. No, the machine can do anything, guys. You're like this kid. No, so we started doing a lot of aluminum parts, whereas before we were doing a lot of stainless steel parts, a lot of bigger parts. stuff like that. And then I was just doing them on this old school 4th axis on the Hardinge, and it would just take forever to rotate around. And I was like, man, there's got to be a better way. So then like the NS guys that do like the jet ski parts, those guys, the Serbian brothers, right? Seeing those guys on the robo drills, and I was like, man, that's kind of cool. And then like at that time, in walks the Method salesman, and it was kind of the perfect storm. And I guess also people will see it on my Instagram. Like I had that 120 round drum mag for AR-15s, like the clamshell one. I was heavy into prototyping that and like making that. And I was like, I'm going to bring this to market. And so that was a lot of aluminum. And I was like, one of the parts was like 13 pounds, starts out at 13 pounds and it ends up just shy of 1 pound. Right. So it's a ton of material removal, long tools. I'm just moving archaically slow on the Hardinge. I have an 8,000 RPM spindle. I'm running at like 7,500 because I don't want the machine to blow up. And I'm just like, man, I need more RPMs. And then, the Methods salesman, his name was Jack. He's since retired. He's coming in here and he's like, this is a perfect job for a robo drill, So I was like, I'll look at it. You quote me, And he's like, when are you going to buy a machine? And I was like, oh, I don't know, man. When I have a big contract and I have extra money, like, I'm going to buy another machine. And that dude was persistent. Like he was rough around the edges. I think he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, but honestly, just a solid dude. And he wasn't lying. He wasn't trying to like sell you the moon and the stars, but he's just like robo drills. Robo drills are awesome machines. These are tiny aluminum parts. You can get it with a 5th axis. You can make inside the drum mag. There's a handful of 5th axis parts, little ones. He's like, these are perfect. These are perfect for that machine. And yeah. And so it was between the robo drill and a Mazak. That's what it came down to.
Which Mazak?
Oh man, Jordan, my Mazak salesman's going to be real mad at me that I'm not plugging Mazak harder here.
Something.
Yeah. I tried to look it up just now. I'm making noise on the computer. A quality machine, but it only had a 10 pallet pool, right? So it was a larger format machine. I could have put bigger parts on it. I think it had an 18,000 RPM spindle, a solid machine. Honestly, dollars to dollars, I think it would have probably been a little bit cheaper, and it would have been cheaper only because of all of the work holding. Right here, I'm tooling up 60 pallets versus 10 pallets. Right, so I'm 65K into pallets, right? Instead of 10.
So yeah, give us the specs of the K plus that you ended up with. Is it plus K or K plus? I can never tell.
It's 60K. It's the K60, and then the K plus is a larger format of mine. Right.
Okay.
And so I actually. And this is where people are just going to shake their heads. Like, I saw this machine in the showroom in Corona, California, down in LA, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll take it." And like I'm asking,
you're a salesman, dream customer. It's like, go, I don't need a craft shop. No, let's just get it. Let's do it,
bro. I saw the robot moving it in and out, and I just like, and also I'd been watching like Titans of CNC. He had a robot on a robo drill, and he was a big fan. Obviously, he's probably not going to say anything bad about it. And that, yes, that's on a tangent. Like a lot of the machining community, I think, kind of hates on him. And dude, I'm a big fan. Like I support it. I think like just like Instagram and these podcasts are good for machinists that are within the industry already. I think that he is helping to bring in young, talented people that could actually latch onto this and be very successful in this career. But anyway, I digress. So I'd seen that. I'd seen John Saunders with a robot on a robo drill. He wasn't a huge fan, but I saw it. I was like, I want it. What's the price? And they were like, I forget what the price was. It was like, they were like, $515,000, and I was like, box it up, baby. Like, I'm here. Like, And I always joke around. My dad hates it. I'm like, I'm going to be like $5 million in debt, you know? And it's like, hey, relax, you know?
Oh, man.
But like,
So how many tools and pallets does this machine have? You said it was 60 pallets?
60 pallets. Yep. So there's 60 pallets. You have 21 tools in the turret, and then you have an additional 45 tools off to the side that the robot can load and unload into the machine, as long as you have one empty pocket inside the tool changer.
Okay.
So the robot it's a shunk on there, and the way that the gripper works is it can grab both the pallets, and then it kind of like uses a different part of the gripper to grab the BT30 tools and bring them in and out.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's slick. It's super slick. Obviously, and another, so just talking about the tools real quick before we forget. So like, let's say that you have 10 tools in a program, right? And let's say that 3 of your tools are outside of the machine in this add-on machine cell thing, right? When you call up that program, it will load those tools and unload tools that aren't part of that program out to the outside, so that all 10 of your tools are just right there optimizing your program.
Oh, neat. So you gain all of the speed of a robo drill back. You're not waiting on the robot.
You're not waiting. It's not like it's going to take and load and unload a tool every time to run 10 parts. It's not going to go grab that extra tool. It's going to bring it in and keep it in there. And what it's going to do is it's going to take out the tools that have not been there's a timer, like it's keeping track, right, of when a tool was used. So if the tool's not in the program and the tool wasn't used on the last 3 programs, that tool, let's just say a 1/2-inch end mill, has been sitting in there the longest unused, it's going to pull that one out and just, but it'll pull it back in the next time you have a program that needs that end mill. So it's
right. So is that the tool availability check? Because we got a question from Michael Bronson on the Patreon. Are you using the plus K features of tool availability check and broken tool flagging pallets as damaged?
Yeah, yes, I am. So, short answer, yes. We just started doing that probably about a month ago. So the machine, and again, this timeline's going to get blurry. Like when the machine was dropped off, so we ordered this machine to use cutting oil, right? I wanted to mimic a kern. So I was like, I want to use cutting oil. I don't want to worry about water evaporating on a 60-hour runtime when I'm not there over the weekends. And I want this machine to look like a Swiss screw machine after 15 years of abuse, right? I want it to be nice and shiny and not all corroded and rusty and clapped out. So we had to wait like 3 months or so for the big coolant tank. So we kind of limped around with that original 70-gallon tank that came with the machine. So we were running cutting oil in a tank that wasn't really meant to run cutting oil. So I couldn't run unattended for like a 3 or 4 month time frame as we kind of waited on the big coolant tank. And then fast forward, I'm still not running unattended because of the coolant tank. But I mean, this is a tale as old as time itself, right? Like coolant tanks are garbage.
Yeah, they are the Achilles heel.
They are the
of
Achilles
most
heel.
Automation, it seems like.
And in their defense, right? They're tasked with a very hard job. Hey, we're going to have chips that could be 2 inches long and also powder. And if you could just sort that out for us, right? Like that'd be great. And so on the machine, so using Complete, right? So I'll program in Fusion. I run everything through Complete before I run it to that machine. And so there's just a little click box in Complete that you click that says like tool breakage detection. So now every time a tool runs in that machine, it just does a tool breakage detection, right? After every single tool change. And I can unclick it if I didn't want it to run during the day, and then I can just re-click it and post, or I can have the 2 different NCs formats, however you want to skin that cat. So yes, we are using tool breakage detection. Yes, we have played with the tool life timers, and then it'll time out a tool. It'll go put it outside of the inside of the machine. So they call that like, that's number one, right? And then number two would be the tools out there. And then number three would be the pallets within the machine, right? Kind of this fully integrated control in your tool library. And then in the tool library, it's super cool. You can type in, because again, you're going off of tool types, right? In terms of tool height offsets, right? You can't, in this machine, because it's a random pocket and because it's doing everything off of a tool type and not a tool number, it needs to reference the correct gauge length, right? So we finally got all that dialed in about a month ago, which now allows us to do, when the tool breaks or the tool times out, it goes and grabs a new tool, but it has the proper gauge length, right? That it's calling, right? And so that has honestly been the biggest learning curve of this machine. So the Hardinge 2001 had a FANUC control, but it was like a dinosaur control. I don't know. It was like the most basic control. Horrible, right? And I was like, oh, FANUC controls are garbage. And then now I'm on this one and I'm like, dude, FANUC is killing it. Like it's so intuitive. It prompts you. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, dude, this is machining for dummies. Super cool. And I guess to methods, great support. Chris Zapatini, right, came in here a couple times. That dude set me up for success, right? He dialed in Fusion. He kept me from crashing this machine and being a knucklehead. He verified everything. He went back and forth a bunch of times with Multi-Axis, who I have the machine module is what they call it. So the machine module is like predicated off the serial number of this machine, right?
Oh, gotcha. So it's the exact geometry with all the same options you have and all that stuff.
Everything, right? It's a duplicate of your machine. But then the problem is that nobody took the time to say like, oh, well, the fifth axis trunnion's like 3 inches this way or that. You know what I mean? So I could have programmed something, ran it through Camplete, and it would have been like, oh, it's perfect. And then like, not that I would be this reckless, like having never made a part, just send it over there and hit go, right? And then so Chris Sabatini was here with me when that happened, and like we walked through those steps. I mean, I looked over his shoulder as he did all the work, right? As he did all the heavy lifting. That dude's got a big brain. I don't know how he holds his head up. He's got a strong neck. Like that dude's
yeah. Well, I know that we talked a bunch of the DSI thing because you were the first person besides Chris who I'd talked to who used Camplete and was like, oh yeah, I've got probing working. I'm super happy with it. It's not a big deal. And then you talk to other people and they're like, oh yeah, it's like a real headache and I don't use it anymore. And so it was a kind of a refreshing counterpoint to that, common refrain that I hear from a lot of people.
Yeah. And I'm sure that my experience with it, and I would probably be saying like, oh, Camplete is trash, right? If Chris wasn't like the man and came in here and just made it sing and dance from the jump, right? Like I hit post from Fusion and Camplete just opens up and is like, basically I click one more button, it simulates it, and it either tells me like I'm going to have a collision or it says you're good to go. And that's
right.
How simple it is. And then you hit export, and then through chatter, again, Pete over there, that dude's killing it. It's on the data server and I just hit run, right? And so as long as as of right now, if I've already loaded the tool, I've already used the tool in a previous job, I will literally program a part that I've never programmed before, hit go, send it through Camplete, send it over to the machine, hit go, 100% rapids, the machine's warmed up, and I walk away. If it's going to be an hour-long runtime or a 30-minute runtime. And that's how dialed Camplete is. And when people are like, why would you pay $4,000 something a year for Camplete? I'm like, dude, have you guys single blocked a fifth axis program that's like an hour long? You're going to be there all day. Like if you're getting down within 20, 30, 50, 60 thousandths of collisions, it's scary. Like that's some scary stuff. And I think I have Camplete set at like it gives me a warning if I'm within like 10 thousandths of like hitting something. And then it'll tell me like 560 warnings or something, in a 30-minute runtime. And I'm like, oh, we're good to go, baby, And
Send it.
full send, right? And short of me breaking an end mill when Chris was standing there, and again, it is only because I just don't know what you don't know, and I was trying to run with like similar speeds and feeds that I would run over on the Hardinge, and then Chris is like, look, dude, you gotta go MCO. You need 5-6 flutes, and so I'm a big fan of MCO. Patrick, for like the whole Northwest division, you call that dude, he's super cool. He'll send you some free end mills to rip and try out. Like, they'll back up what they're saying. And so, now on the robo drill, for example, I'm not taking any more than like 50 or 80 thou step over on like a 1/2 inch end mill, but I'll still take like 1 1/4 depth of cut at 15,000 RPM, 3 thou per tooth for roughing with, a chip breaker. And I forget what that is on metal removal. A buddy of mine, we were just talking about it the other day. I think I was at like 22. No, maybe I was more than 22. I don't know. We were kind of comparing it to like a shear hog in his machine, or comparing it to like a 3/8 end mill in his machine or something. But yeah, like, you're removing so many chips. So parts that I was making on the 4th axis on the Hardinge that were taking me like 45 minutes, they're coming off the robo drill in like 15 minutes. And I haven't even truly like made that program perfect for the robo drill. Right. I could probably.
And it's automated, so you can just run 60 of them if you want to.
Yeah. And you literally just hit go and walk away. It's insane. And so we've got the chip fan going. We're using through spindle coolant, which is like the cleanest coolant coming out of this coolant tank. It's been super filtered, and you're blasting off chips. That gets shut off. You use the chip fan, you spin it around a little bit, you let it dance around. Again, I have a Fusion. I'm using a, oh my gosh, when you have like a saved format for a toolpath. A template. And so I have a washdown template that I just apply to the parts. Like, I'm not using some handwritten G-code washdown thing. And like, if I'm only going to make 5 parts or something, I might not even take the time to put the washdown, right? Like, if I have time and if I'm here and whatever. But you just have that option, right? You can suppress it, in Fusion. All that stuff is just so cool. And yeah, so I just use like the 4th axis rotary tool paths as my template, right? So then I just increase the step over, decrease. I just change the feed rates to like, if I want it to go fast, wash it faster or slower, depending on like chip buildup and stuff like that. So that's the big thing. And that's also, Chris has been from the beginning. He's like, hey, like, just slow everything down when it comes to that, and you'll never have any problems. So we added like little brass plugs to some of the holes on the Lang fixture plate because of the small vices that we were using. It was like covering up half of a counter bore. And then sometimes like little chips were getting stuck in there, and even the washdown wasn't getting them. So in terms of like we've had to do to modify to be able to run where I know I'm not going to crimp chips between the vise and the Lang plate, was just a couple of brass plugs that we tapped in there and flush, and super happy with everything on this machine. So you do tool breakage. If it breaks, it grabs a new tool. If the tool is broken, it flags that pallet as damaged, takes it out, brings in a new one, and it just starts from the top. That's
killer.
Wild? Is that not wild? It's like running a horizontal machine. So it's all completely integrated. And it's just like 900 to 960 or whatever it is, 60 of them. Yeah. 901 to 960. And so you just, and it's so cool. So you have a pallet handling program on the data server. So anytime you want to run automated, you select that as your program to run in memory. And then you'll have all the programs that you're going to run in the data server. And like you couldn't fill up the data server. Like, it's insane. Like this machine's maxed out on all of that. And then you go into the pallet handling page and I can say like, hey, pallets 926 through 940 are going to run program 1000. And I can say like, I'm going to run 1 of program 2000. I'm going to run 10 of program 6000. And I hit go and I walk away. If tools break, so let's say we're running 3 different programs and we get halfway through the first set of programs and redundant tooling runs out or times out, or I break stuff and I run out. And then the next set of programs don't use those tools, it automatically jumps forward and runs those other programs.
That's awesome.
And to me, that's a wild level of automation that you otherwise could not achieve on a pick and place system, right? You could do it. Anything is possible, right? But the amount of bog rates and parameters and dude, that whole world is so crazy to me. There's so much, we're standing on the shoulders of giants,
yeah. Well, there's a ton of value in having problems like that already sorted and already integrated into your machine.
Oh, it's worth so much, right? So in this crazy scenario, right, where I'm running 4 of one part at the very beginning, and then I have 6 other programs running these other parts, and I had 30 hours of runtime. I hit go on a Friday. I now don't have to come back if I don't care about those 2 parts that didn't get made. You know what I mean? Because I could just make those up fairly quickly, and it'll just run out those other ones. Chatter will send me all of those updates. It will let me know all of those things. Chatter will let me know what program I'm currently running. It literally lets me know everything. I'm still getting a handle on Chatter, but super useful, super cool for automation. I think meeting CJ, the DSI event, CJ was, and I asked I asked everybody there that was running stuff in an automated fashion, the CAD models gentlemen. All of those guys were so nice to me. They were so helpful, and they were just like, dude, measure every tool, slow everything down, wash everything super well. Spend 4 or 5 more minutes because it doesn't matter because you're at home drinking a beer,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Who cares if it's 5 more minutes? Nobody's working. The robot is roboting and that's it.
Yeah. And, in the Marine Corps, it was it was the whole saying, smooth is fast and fast is smooth, right? So just make everything run nice and smooth. And that's even what, Chris and his employee at Zap Consulting, they put out some great little videos the other day, basically saying smooth is fast and fast is smooth,
Right.
It's just,
we got a few other K+ questions. So Big 5-Axis guy was asking, how does the machine handle the extra 44 tools? He thinks that could be another sticking point for that machine. And then what is your biggest complaint about the system in general? So you mentioned that it uses tool types. Is that tool names versus numbers? And how do you program that in Fusion? And how does the machine handle that? How do you designate a tool? What's the whole workings behind the tool system?
Yeah, so Fusion doesn't care, right? Fusion isn't involved in the tool management over on that side, right? So let's say that I load a tool and I call it tool 5, but it's in pocket 10, right? Because again, it's a random pocket at this point, right? So I put tool 5 into pocket 10, and in the tool manager, I just put hey, I'm putting tool 5 in pot 10, and I'm going to call it type 5. And I try to keep my tool type and my tool number the same. And ultimately, someday that will change, right? There will come a time where I run out of numbers potentially. And that's, well, no, I guess not. So then I can have another tool that's tool 6 in pocket 12, but it's type 5 as well, right?
Oh, so
Because
that's just to designate that it is a sister tool to the original one, that it can be interchangeable.
Because it is a 5-flute half-inch end mill, right? It can be in a tool holder that's not. And so here's where the human element, right? Because humans are great at messing things up. And so like, let's say that I have a half-inch tool that's tool 5 that just also happens to be type 5. And it's in a 60 millimeter long holder, right? Shrink fit holder. But then I just like brain dump and I load a tool, and now I'm only in like a 30 millimeter long gauge length tool holder, right? And when I tested Complete, it said, hey, you're not going to crash. But it was because I was using tool 5, right, in Fusion, that is a 60 millimeter gauge length, right? I'm just using 60 as a placeholder. So that tool times out, or that tool breaks, and it goes and grabs the other tool 5, you could crash the machine, right? If that 30 millimeter gauge length isn't long enough to clear whatever feature on your part, or clear the vise, or, something like that, right? So
gotcha. So you have to be very cognizant of what tool types you have in the machine and what you're using.
Yeah. So if you're going to put in a redundant tool, the easiest way to do it is to be like, I'm only going to use the same gauge length tool holders, right? If I'm putting a drill in a ER32, I'm not going to go put that drill in an ER16, right? Make it a similar type, right?
Right.
So that's the only way that I see that you could potentially have an issue. But believe it or not, there's some safe checks in there. So in tool management, you can tell a tool anytime it's coming from the other carousel, right, outside of the machine, it automatically does a tool measure, right? And but no, that's not going to catch it, because that doesn't know, Fusion, and that measure isn't going to like tell it that it's going to crash, right? That's the only way.
Probably have it check for gauge length though. Like I know High Fly CNC, he has a brother, and he's got part of his post checks the gauge length that Fusion outputs from what the tool setter sets. And if it's not within a certain range from that number, it errors out.
It might error out. Yeah. And so, and you could definitely, I mean, I don't know for sure, but I would say that you could also do something like that out of Complete, right? There's some box in there, because Complete is so powerful, right? The only thing that I've used to edit stuff in Complete so far is like on the washdown, for example, I run a path and then I run the fan back across. But because there was never a forced tool change, Fusion won't give me the M code at the top of that tool path, right? So I'm using through spindle coolant in the fan, and it's coming across the part. And now I want the through coolant to shut off, right? But you really couldn't do that. You can't do that in Fusion, or at least I don't know how, right? Might be able to like force a tool change. I'm not 100% sure. But in Complete, it's as simple as like I click on it, I say like force tool change. Then I click one other button and I just put an M9 there. And now the coolant's off and the fan comes back across, and and it did what I wanted it to do. And I didn't have to like hand edit any G code. It automatically does it, and then it simulates again and checks, and then it posts the code. So
nice.
So the tool grabber, super user friendly, super nice. If you've ever used a random pocket machine, there's like probably not going to really be a learning curve. And this was just my first and you got to realize like after like 3 or 4 days of like the apps guy being here, and shout out to Nate at Methods, like, dude, that guy's got a 10-pound brain too. Like, it's insane. And so like after 3 days, my brain was smoked, right? I had like 20 pages of notes. I'm like trying to remember how to like recover the robot and do all this other stuff. And he's like, hey man, like, oh, we can just call it and I'll just come back some other time. And I was like, sweet, man, like I'll have questions later, And so I got to really kind of play with the machine for a couple months, right? Then when he comes back, I have some questions. He has a bunch of answers. And then that's when we dialed in the robot exchanging, damage control, all that kind of stuff, right? And at that point, I like understood what he was doing, right? And I had the muscle memory of like what buttons to push and how to toggle between all the different screens and the HMI and, all of that. And it's been a ton of fun. And I literally have no qualms, no complaints. To round out that question, what's the thing that I like the least? And that's the coolant tank, right? The coolant tank has been a problem, if I'm being completely honest. But to put it in perspective, everything else has been so flawless that like this one little issue with the coolant tank not just constantly clogging up and all these issues and preventing me from really truly walking away from the machine is a really small problem, right? And it's a problem that will be fixed. And to highlight how great the methods team has been is they're on it, right? We're on like the third or fourth thing that they've fixed, replaced, or done, or, they're constantly chasing it down. And then like they're updating me. They're like, hey, we're having meetings with Henning. Hey, we're doing this. Hey, we're doing that, and so I think honestly, we're at the point, I don't want to overspeak on anything, but like I think Henning's going to come out and look at it. And in Henning's defense, this serial number is 000, right? Because I'm a knucklehead.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I'm a knucklehead. I wanted a huge coolant tank. I wanted cutting oil. I wanted 135 gallons of plus. I wanted 150. And they're like, well, here's a 135. And I was like, all right, I'll take it. And so they, I understand, I think just like any prototype machinist out there, like I understand the struggles of prototyping and I understand that everything's not going to be perfect and that they're going to have to work through it. But I'm being told that they're very open to really trying to solve this problem and make it perfect because they want to be able to put this on these K60s as they start to roll out. When I purchased mine, I believe I was the third machine west of the Mississippi.
Oh, wow.
Right. Yeah. Of the newer, of that control, right, and stuff. They've been prototyping these and building these for a long time.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But in terms of the newer control and all of that and dialed in and yada, yada, I think there's more on the East Coast. The NS guys just got one. They just got LNS chip conveyors, and he posted some pictures on his story, and I commented and I was like, hey, good luck. So, but yeah, just super great experience. I love this machine. I really am in love with it.
Awesome. Well, your friend and listener, Phil Ortiz, asked a couple great questions. First up, are there any lessons or ideas you've carried forward from your time in the Marines into running a machine shop?
Yeah, I think kind of embracing the suck, like when it's tough and it's hard and you're tired and you've been working long hours or whatever, you're tired of being in the desert of Afghanistan, whatever the case may be, right? Individual experiences may vary, right? I had a great time in the Marine Corps, right? Like I never got shot at. It was a great time, right? Just kind of embracing that suck, knowing that, hey, it's tough right now, but like this is temporary, right? And that we're going to get through it. We're going to solve it. And it's very much like our mentality there was fail fast, fail often, right? Don't like go down some rabbit hole so far that like you can't recover, right? Like we don't want people to die. We don't want people to get hurt. Like fail fast, fail often, just correct it, move on. And that's very much how I kind of tackle all these problems.
I love that. Yeah. His next one was, what is the biggest point of friction in running a machine shop for you?
It's crazy because a shop can't grow, a shop can't get better, the quality can't get better, the inspection can't get better. Nothing can get better if sales aren't being made. And I'm like I have this aversion to this idea of like, I got to go out and sell, I want to be like a problem solver for my clients, right? Like In a perfect world, my clients would always call me and I would never have to call them other than to just say like, hey, friend or client that we have a really solid relationship, like, I don't know, buy them lunch or something. But like, it's just tough. It's tough for me to like try to like push myself in through a door and be like, hey, let me build something for you. I much prefer them calling and saying like, hey, we're having this issue. Like, do you think you could take a look at it? And I'm like, sign me up. Like I'm here to help, And so that's always been my biggest weak point. And it's compounded by the fact that we're such a small shop, right? That we're 2 people. And that when we get truly busy and our heads are down and we're working 12, 15, 18 hours a day on some crazy project and we ship it and like we high five each other and we're like, yes. And then like we turn around to the job board and there's nothing there because I haven't been calling clients. I haven't been knocking on doors, That's the biggest issue for me.
Okay. Well, alongside that, his last question was, what keeps Shawn Conour awake at night?
So I'm a father, and I have a great partner, Annalisa, and we have 3 great children. Daughter's 6, and our twin boys are 1.5 years old. And I think something that keeps me up at night is just like, am I doing enough? Am I going to raise well-adjusted children to society, that are going to be independent and be able to provide for themselves? That definitely keeps me up.
I think anyone who knows you knows that your kids will be well-adjusted. So
I hope so. Well,
time
will tell. We'll circle back to this in like 18 years,
All right, deal. Yeah. Brings me on to shop news and new things. What else is new and exciting in your world right now?
Really tooling up this RoboDrill still. We just recently bought a handful of some nice OSG flat bottom drills for some different features that we're working on a project that's coming up. Again, going down the rabbit hole with MCO, they just sent me some new tools to try out that are technically for like Inconel. It's like a 6 flute. But I was looking for like a 5/16 ml for a very specific little feature, 1-inch depth of cut, and I wanted as much rigidity as possible. And so they were super cool. They're like, hey, this isn't for aluminum, but if you increase your final step over, stock on there, however they worded it, right? They're like, you might be okay, and we'll send it to you to try out. And then slitting saws. So I went down the rabbit hole of trying to get a flush mount slitting saw for the RoboDrill. Because again, so many of these parts have features where we can tab them off. I guess I would say 90% of the parts that I make don't come with a blueprint, right? Like I'm either designing a part off of other parts that it needs to mate to, or they're beat up parts, and then I'm trying to recreate them and re-engineer them. So I do have a lot of liberties when it comes to like, oh, well, I could use a slitting saw on this surface. And if it's not perfect, it doesn't matter because it's an industrial use part. And as long as tolerance wise, we're good, then we're good. And so I've been like researching, like, how are guys doing it? Like, hey, if you guys are like tabbing stuff off and getting great finishes and holding parallelism or something, within reason, I'd love to pick your brain.
I'd highly recommend the Hoffman saw and arbor. It works fantastic.
Hoffman. So I guess I probably should have asked the internet, honestly. I ended up going with a Mari tool arbor holder. And then I forget the name of the saw, but we've been using them for a long time. It's like a staggered tooth. It's made in Germany. It's a beautiful saw. Like everything's relieved, right? So it's like
Mimatic.
Maybe it's like a 0.95 thickness on the slitting saw. I have an aversion to like carbide slitting saws that are big. I just see them fracture all the time on the internet.
Yeah, the Hoffman one I use is high speed. I'll send you the part numbers after, but we use it on a Mari tool 16 M16 threaded holder, and then you just buy the arbor and the saw from Hoffman, and it works fantastic in plastics and aluminum so far.
Oh, sick. Yes, and because I'm down to have more than one. I'm gonna need more than one slitting saw, right? I did buy a big one. This one's a 5-inch diameter.
Oh, geez. Yeah. The
only-
one I use is 80 millimeter, and then it's TSC as well. So you get pretty good coverage on the actual saw itself.
So when you slit a part off, right, you're just slitting it off and leaving a tab on like one side, or are you leaving the tab down the center of the part? How are you?
I usually leave the tab down the center, but off center. So I'll take my first cut will be deeper than my second cut. So that way on my second cut, if there's any weight to the part, it wants to fall away from the saw and not towards the saw.
Oh, that's a, see, like you say that and I'm like, that makes so much sense. And I'm like sitting here scratching my head looking at these parts, like, how am I going to slit these off? But yeah, dude, thank you.
Yeah. I'll send you the part numbers after we're done here. And if anybody is listening to this and wants them, reach out. When I posted it, I think I posted it on my Instagram stories when I first got it. I had a bunch of people reach out and I sent them all the part numbers. So I'm happy to share.
Sick. Thank you.
But any other exciting things?
Oh, we bought a building.
Yeah, I was going to say. I was going to bring it up if you didn't.
Dude, my brain is shot. We shot a YouTube video inside the building today. So in the next week or two, we'll post the inside and people will be able to see it. On the last YouTube video, we just walked around the outside, and the outside looks so much rougher than the inside. Like on the outside, it looks really rough, and then you get on the inside and you're like, oh, this is so much better than the outside. Anyway, we bought a 5,200 square foot building, and it's been abandoned for like the last 20 years, 30 years or something crazy. There was technically somebody in there, but they were using it as like storage, right? It's cinder block walls. The concrete is anywhere from like 18 inches to 24 inches thick is what is a good estimate. Because like there's a general contractor out there who's been like remodeling bathrooms in all these old buildings, and he's like, dude, the concrete is just ridiculous. So like, I'm super pumped.
There's no machine you could buy that is going to test that limit. Like you're golden.
Yeah, and the doors aren't huge, so there's no machine that I could get into that building, right, that would even come close to. And our soil over here is so great, and it's so compacted. Like, but anyway, yeah. So I don't know all the. I've measured with a tape measure and stuff, but like it's not a huge eave. Like right now in the shop we're in right now, we have 2 bay doors that are 14 feet wide, 14 feet tall, right? So I'm spoiled with like the idea of what a bay door is, you know? And our doors here in the shop are like the solid ones because my dad cannot stand roll-up doors that blow in the wind. Like it drives him crazy. So we have these insulated doors and like on door openers and you just hit a button and I'm like super spoiled, right? It's bougie and I'm spoiled. But in this building, you know, we're going to have to get new doors and stuff. But yeah, it's super exciting, scary. You know, you've been talking, it's funny, you know, I've been listening, you know, to you talk about building for a long time, you know, and I've been working on this deal for 22 months. 22 months of trying to
putting me to shame here, bitching about, you know, 13 months or 15 months of looking.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And it was like 22 months since I walked the building and was like, I want to buy it. 22 months. And so dealing with like, look, I'm not going to use love. Our government's okay, right? Our local government, right? Like, but you got to really take that with a grain of salt. Very critical of public figures, right? And so many veterans are just like so anti-government. It's funny.
Yeah.
There's great music. We know.
I think there's a lot of people in general right now that are fairly anti-government.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, exactly.
And
no, it's worth mentioning before we go too far that this completes your full story because this building is on that same Air Force base.
Yes. Thank you for making that. So the Air Force base that my father moved to back in the early 90s, late 80s, here we are again, right? Moving back out there. This time, instead of renting, we own, which is super cool. And actually, one of my brothers called me the other day and he's like, bro, you're dad 2.0. Like, you got 3 kids. You're going back to the base. Dad had 3 kids. He's going to the base. He's like, you're our father, you know?
How far away is this building from the one that your dad was in?
10, 15 minutes, maybe max. 15 if you like behind a semi truck or something.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, super close. I'm actually going to be closer to work in the home that I live in than the shop that I currently drive to every day right now.
Oh no, I meant his original building on the Air Force base though. How close is that building to the one that you are in now? Or dude, you're buying?
If you could fly as a crow flies, like less than a mile. And you're talking about a base that's like, I think like several thousand acres, but don't quote me on that.
Still, how cool is that? Like what a real full circle that is.
Yeah, it's super cool. And so we're going to bring in 600 amps of 480 power. It's not PG&E. So PG&E power, anybody listening in California, like PG&E power is stupid expensive. And so I'm going to be on MID power. My power bill is going to go down. Those dudes are so much nicer to work with. It's actually
hopefully more reliable too, because I feel like every California machinist I have on the podcast is, curses PG&E for their terrible infrastructure.
Other than like somebody hitting a telephone pole and like killing themselves, typically like drunk drivers around like New Year's, our power's pretty solid. I actually believe, I was reading somewhere the other day that the California power grid is one of the most reliable, largest power grids in the world. But like,
really?
But I guess like per the news, we've had a bad rep because of like fires and stuff, right? But if we kind of take out some of those isolated recent incidences that put a bad rep on the California power grid, the California power grid is actually pretty impressive. Again, I'm not a big government guy, but it's expensive. So in my mind, it better be the best, right? Like if we're paying more per kilowatt hour than anybody else in the country, right? Like we better have a strong grid.
Totally.
But yeah, so we're going to do that and we're going to kind of see where the world takes us. I hope that, in the next 2 years, maybe I can fulfill my self-prophecy of being able to call myself like a gun builder and designer and stuff like that. I hope that as the years go on that we move away a little bit from the job shop stuff. I'd still obviously build like racking arms and repeat type stuff.
Right.
Proprietary.
So actually you reminded me, Clayton Miller also asked me, I forgot to put it in our questions, what's the update on the drum mag?
Dude, I love that guy. He's such a solid dude. Dude, so the drum mag, like, I hate to say this, like it's ready for production. It's just, it's on me now. We've been so blessed and we've been so busy with client work that I just haven't had time to get it over to the RoboDrill. Most of it's going to be fairly simple to get over there. Most of it's going to just run in the pallets that we currently have, the little small vices. But like the main body will have to be on like a fixture plate that I hand load. More than likely, I don't think the robot is going to be big enough to get it on there. I might be able to get creative on it, but yeah, it's all on my shoulders now. We've done a lot of testing. We've worked out a lot of kinks. Clayton, dude, that guy, like I sent him a mag and he like tested it and gave me feedback and we brainstormed like some of the issues. Drum mags historically are laden with a lot of issues, reliability issues. And so we're trying to build the Porsche of drum mags, right? That doesn't have issues that people will really love. And it's also problematic because it's the largest drum mag that you can get for an AR-15, basically. And it's the only clamshell drum mag. So like, I'm just like, I don't know. It's chaotic. It's crazy. But
just want all the boxes checked.
I want all of them. I don't want there to be any concessions, and there's concessions in everything, right? So, and it's such an expense. Like, I don't know that I can make this claim, but I'm pretty sure that it's the most high-end drum mag or like a shoulder-fired weapon, right? They're mag feeding systems for like tanks and jets and stuff. Those are more expensive, right? But for a shoulder fired gun, I think that we've probably made the most complicated magazine ever. And so it Type 3 hard ammo, and we're going to sell it with a lifetime warranty. And as long as I'm alive and I own a machine shop and I'm making parts, like, I'll service it and I'll fix it and we'll keep it running. And so I think that some people are going to fall out of their chairs, but it's like a $1,200 product, right? It comes in a Pelican case. Like, it's a high-end, beautiful product.
Yeah. I mean, seeing the market for like EDC stuff and gun stuff and just, all of the things that people spend ridiculous money on, I don't think you'll have any problem selling those at $1,200.
Yeah. And you got to realize that the main clientele, like, they have AR-15s that they got like 18 grand into, full autos and all that kind of stuff. So that's really the market. I don't think that I'm ever going to sell a bunch of them. I was going to build it regardless for myself, as a pet project. And then I was like, well, I should maybe sell some.
All right. So that brings us to the last two questions I ask every guest every week. First up, what did you research this week? Doesn't have to be machining related, though it can be, but what's been popping up in your browser?
Yeah, kind of like I mentioned earlier, a lot of what I've been looking at is slitting saws and then flat bottom drills. So I went with just for anybody listening, I don't know if they have any experience with them, a 1/2-inch flat bottom drill, OSG through coolant. It's a carbide drill, 10.1 millimeter and 10.9 millimeter. So the speeds and feeds on OSG's webpage are insane. And I'm just like, man, I'm kind of scared to run it that fast. So I put in a call to the OSG rep, and he'll probably call me back tomorrow, and we'll see what they say. But I'm going to definitely try to push the limits of that drill. So that's what I've been researching.
Dude, some of their feeds and speeds are insane. They really are. Like, I started using their, what do they call it? AT2R spec thread mills. They do the hole and the thread all in one, and they're for aluminum and plastic. And I want to say that even on like a 440 thread mill, they were telling me to push like an 11 thou chip load. So be like interpolating this bore at 200 something inches a minute. And so I was like, well, I'm not doing that. Like, even if it can, I don't care. Like you said earlier, process reliability is king. I'm dropping that way back. But like, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. That's just nuts.
Dude, it's insane. It's so insane. Real quick on the OSG drills, we were doing some Ampco bronze, really hard stuff for valve guides in motors for valves. And the longest, and this was just a lathe part, and half the cycle time on that part was drilling the hole through it. And the hole didn't really matter that much. It needed to be pretty straight because it was going to be reamed, right? But it was undersized. We switched to a carbide drill, and we were like talking to local guys, Tim, and he's like, yeah, just punch it at this. And I was like, Tim, it's like I forget, it's a metric size. It's a tiny drill. And he's like, yeah, just full send. And I was like, I'm going to break this drill. He's like, I'll send you 5 more if you break it right now. Just hit go while I'm on the phone. and like, we went from like 2.5 minutes of pecking our way through this thing and burning up a bunch of drills to just like, it was like 20 seconds. Technically, if we did what he said, it would have been like 5 seconds. Like, insane. So cool. The world's
That's
wild.
nuts.
Yeah.
Oh, anything else you've been researching?
That a little bit of like building related stuff, what people are doing. I'm kind of putting the cart before the horse, but I was like researching like people that kind of grind concrete, make it super, super smooth before they like epoxy it and stuff. So that's because that's coming at the shop. We're going to get to the point where we're ready to grind it. The concrete's in great shape, but I still want to just kind of kiss it. I want to know that take out any little highs maybe that exist. So,
right. Totally.
Yeah.
Well, then that brings me on to the last question I ask every guest every week, which is, what are the things you're working on to be a better person, leader, employer, what have you? None of us are perfect. We're all working on stuff. What are you working on?
Yeah, for me, it's, with the new year, having just passed, I'm working on being more intentional with Annie. Mainly just like in the evenings, like once the kids are in bed, like we're exhausted. She goes all day, with those kids, and then I'm at work all day, and then I come home and I help, and we just work. And then it's almost like we just go, and then we just like go to sleep. It's like, and so I'm trying to be just more intentional with her and show her that I truly love her and appreciate all that she's doing for us and the family. And then I've kind of figured out throughout the years that for me, I'm best when like I'm building something, when I'm trying to figure something out, almost when I'm struggling, right? Like this, embracing the suck kind of mentality. And so I've been having a great time like at the shop because I have so many fires to put out, And I guess I should say that in conjunction with that, if I'm like rolling jujitsu 2 days a week, which is like, it's insane because like the jujitsu gym is literally like, I walk to it from my house. It's like a block away. But it's like, it's an hour and a half of my time, and so it kind of cuts in right into like bedtime with the babies and all of that. And so when I'm going to jujitsu and I'm rolling 2 days a week, like I'm like a better father, a better husband. I'm a better son to my father. Like I'm more patient. And it's just me being really disciplined. And Annie's really good about knowing like, hey, you need, that's like your only time, And so if I can't do that, I try to sneak in a run and then I can put the boys in the jogger. And then that way I'm at least giving her a break from the babies. And then they like it as well. And it's good for them to get out and get fresh air. So I'm trying to be real intentional as well with either running twice a week or rolling twice a week. Because that's just, it's good. It's good for me to sweat. Like I have to, or I just get all balled up. And then every new year, January 1st, I swim across this lake and I like run up this hill barefoot and I like destroy my feet. And then I come back down and swim back across. So I just did that. And that's always like a beginning of the year. Hey, January 1, we have 365 fresh slate days ahead of us. And that always kind of helps get my head right and kind of, again, just like, wow, that sucked. So I can kind of, if I can do that, if I can do that, you know what I mean? Like I can fix a coolant tank issue, And so, yeah, I just do that and I freeze my butt off. And I posted that on Instagram if anybody wants to see me like shaking afterwards. Or it's like,
it was,
yeah,
it's like, it definitely did not look fun for sure.
Like we could see our breath is like 55. And again, so many other places in the country, it's like the lakes are frozen. They're like, Shawn, that's not cold. Like, but it's cold for California. And that water's freezing. It's coming out of another lake at the bottom of a dam. So like the water is just like, I don't know how cold it is, but it's chill.
It's cold. Yeah. And two things can suck. They can suck differently, but they can still suck. Like, your cold can still be cold. And no, I think that those are awesome things to work on. I think that anybody who, either runs a business or owns a business can definitely empathize and sympathize there of being more intentional with their spouse. I think that we all, I think we're all very lucky to have spouses that stick with us despite the suck of owning a business. And
she's so understanding. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, my wife's the same way. Like I am incredibly lucky to have someone so patient with me when I am deep in the suck and like, need all of the patience. So yeah, I think that that's an excellent thing to work on.
Yeah, man.
Well, Shawn, thank you so much. It has been fantastic to talk to you again. I loved hanging out at the DSI thing and texting and stuff, but I'm really glad we got to dive into your backstory.
Dude, it's been a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
Real quick, again, remind everyone where they can find you online.
So Instagram, Conour _MFG. Conour's funky. It's CONOUR. And then Conour Manufacturing on YouTube. We're gonna do a better job. We're working on it on YouTube. We have some really cool collaborations coming up. Actually with DSI on the YouTube side of the equation. Again, those guys, I've been working with them since 2000, or they've been helping me since 2017. And so we're gonna partner up, and we're gonna try to showcase some of what those guys do, because I think a lot of the machining community could benefit for knowing how quick they turn around post processors and all the different other services that they offer.
Awesome. There will be a link in the show notes to your, I'll probably link to your $800,000 RoboDrill video, and then they can go find you from there.
Yeah, that's the one that gets everybody upset. So yeah.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to new Patreon members. Let's see, Randy, Aiden, Mariano, Gimbal Automation, and Nick. Thank you so much. You guys make this show possible. Let me talk to people like Shawn and bring you content. Thank you all for listening, and I will be back next week.